Okay. I'm going to do just a short editing demo to show you a little bit about kind of like my signature style, how I make assessments while I edit, and some of the tweaks that I make. And hopefully, this is helpful or interesting to you. The first thing I do when I finish a session or a wedding is I back everything up. I save all the raws. I shoot in RAW, and then I go through and cull them in Photo Mechanic. So if you aren't using Photo Mechanic, I highly recommend it. It's a great program, makes culling really easy. And then you only import the photos that you keep in Lightroom. So this is Lightroom. This is where I do all of my editing, 99% of my editing. I do use Photoshop every once in a while, but only if I am doing some heavy lifting with removing things or things like that, which really isn't my style, so I don't really find myself using it a ton. I do everything I possibly can in camera to get the photos the way I want them, so that by the time I'm editing them, it's really just making small adjustments aesthetically rather than like majorly correcting stuff. So a lot of that is just practice and familiarity with different lighting situations and then like camera settings. But a couple things to start is I always shoot in manual, and I always shoot with Kelvin white balance, and that is something that really helps maintain consistency across your gallery. If you're shooting an auto white balance, you'll notice that some photos look really cool and others look really warm, and that will affect the colors in the whole cohesive sense. And yeah, you can edit that, but it makes it a lot easier if they're like already all the same temperature when you're editing. So shoot in Kelvin as much as you possibly can. Okay, so I picked 5 photos from this lovely wedding, my and Jake's lovely, beautiful wedding at the UW Center for Urban Horticulture last fall. And I tried to pick different lighting situations. So these are all raw. This is straight out of camera. I haven't done anything to them yet. So I started at the beginning of the day where Mai's getting ready, and then some family portraits and the bridesmaid shot, and some lovely romantic shots during their portrait time at golden hour, which is one of my favorite times to shoot. So obviously you'll notice they look a little dark. That's intentional. It's with digital, it's very easy to bring up shadows. Your digital files retain a lot of memory when they're in the how should I say this? It's if you blow it out and if it's too bright, you lose a lot of information. But if it's a little on the dark side, it's all in there. It's easier to bring it back up. So that's why it's good to shoot a little dark, not black. But a little dark is always safer if you're finding that like your highlights are usually blown. So one thing I'm always looking for is like skin highlights. So when I say that, I mean kind of like these areas where the skin is receiving like most of the brightest part of the light. If you blow that, if you make it too bright, then they kind of end up looking like, it ends up looking kind of weird when you edit. Okay, so I have a bunch of presets that I've created, and I am a narcissist, so I named them after myself. I highly recommend starting with, if you're new to this, to invest in some presets, like try some different ones. The very first ones I ever bought were the dirty boots and messy hair presets, which were actually great for a little while. And then I found that they were just a little too punchy and heavy for me, and they felt a little too moody. But it was through the tweaking of those that I learned kind of my own editing style. And I would say these are really just ones that I've developed. So as much as you can do that, that helps you create a consistent editing style too. So I find myself usually coming back to this one that I've named the Emily Keeney. It's been updated a few times. And then I do have variations on it that I've saved when I like how something's looking and it looks good over a whole cohesive set, then I'll sometimes save it. But anyway, I'm going to start with just my clean, classic Emily Keeney one here. Okay, so obviously still looking a little dark. So I'm going to bring up the exposure a little bit. All right, I like that. And I want this to be a little warmer. This was at golden hour. So I want this to feel a little bit warmer. So I'm going to take this slider up a bit. I feel like if you go too far, you'll know, like, that's too far. So I'm going to bring it back a little bit. Yeah, like that. Okay. And then the tint is fun to play with too. If you bring it down to green, it has a little bit more of like a filmy look, which is fun, but I want to keep it right about there. And a lot of this is just like going with your gut and your instinct. It's not an exact science. Okay, so I'm going to add a little bit of contrast. Just a little bit, like that. So before and after. Just a little bit. And I might play with, so I usually have my highlights down like this, and then I bring up my shadows. I'm gonna do it just a little bit more yak, so you can see kind of like in his jacket and like in the hair. I just want to see a little bit more, so I'm gonna bring that up, and then I don't want it to get washed out or like all kind of feel very flat, so I'm gonna bring my blacks down a little bit, which just adds like a little bit more contrast. So okay, I bring my clarity down a little bit because I really don't like images that are super duper sharp looking. I'll show you what happens if you bring it back up. It just gets this like crusty thing that I think is gross. So I'm gonna bring it just a touch under. Like, I want it to feel like a memory. I don't want it to be like, here's exactly everything you saw in high def, exact, you know, I don't know. To me, that's just a little like vulgar or something. Okay, and then I do bring the saturation down just a touch, and vibrance just a teeny tiny bit. Tone curve ends up looking a little bit like this, and teeny bit of sharpening, and then a little teeny bit of luminance too. And really all this does is kind of softens a tiny bit, but you can kind of see what happens if you go way overboard. Everything kind of gets this like really glazy. You lose like all the information, and you know, it looks a little weird. So I'm gonna bring it down. Yeah, right there. Okay. I'm pretty happy with how this image looks. I'll show you the before and after. So this was before, and then this is after. Actually, before doesn't show. Here. So that's before. And that's after. Okay, actually, it's a little too orange. It's really important to me that my skin tones don't go orange. I really don't like that. So that looks better to me. So go here, before and after. Yay. So with Lightroom, you can hit copy, which is great if you want to copy all the adjustments you just made. So I'm going to copy it and then take it over to my next image, which was shot just seconds later. And I'm going to paste it and we're going to see what we think. So, okay. So the reason this has happened is because you'll see this really bright, the light source is really bright coming in from behind my hair versus in this last photo, it is still behind them, but their bodies are blocking most of the light. So it's very backlit, and the light isn't directly coming into the camera lens. And so when the light comes directly into the camera lens, that's when you kind of get this whole like hazy, blown out effect. So so let's kind of play around with this. So I'm going to take the exposure down just a little bit because otherwise, like, I can't see their faces. So I want to see a little bit more of their faces. All right. And then one of the tools that I've found kind of fun and helpful is this dehaze tool. And it kind of naturally adds a little bit of contrast. And it also, in a weird way, adds a little bit of like color punch. So I'm just going to show you. So for this image, it really does help when there is a lot of haze. So it's easy to kind of go overboard. So I'll show you like all the way. Like, whoa, okay, yeah, hi, 2002. And then if you like dehaze it all the way down, we lose all the information. So kind of right about here, that looks good to me. It's okay to me that this still feels a little hazy because like it's sunset. It was very romantic and like pretty and moody, and I don't really want to lose that kind of stuff. I would also just play with the contrast just a little bit, maybe add a tiny bit. Great. And then let's bring this vibrance down just a little because it's feeling a little, yeah, like that, because it was just feeling a little too punchy. All right. The last thing is I might play around with cropping it. I really do my best to get a composition in camera that I like. But every now and then later on you can do something with the image that feels really lovely. This one feels maybe just like a little centered for me. So I'm just gonna crop it a teeny bit and just bring them over here just a little bit. And one of the great things about this grid is that it kind of gives you this, like the rule of thirds, which really tells you like your focal point should be like in one of these cross sections, which I mean, rules schmools, like I don't go with that all the time, but if it is a little bit off center, it does kind of help just create rhythm and movement. Like your eye enters up here and then it kind of, you know, comes down like back around. So let's see, I think I like that. Yeah. So I'll show you before and after. Cool. All right. So let's take this back to the beginning of the day. All right, so here's my reading a letter from lovely Jake. So let's just for fun, let's just paste the settings that we had from the field. Okay. I actually really like that. Yeah. Let's bring it up in exposure just a little bit. You can see a little bit more of what's going on. And remember, this was copied from that first picture, so we don't have anything going on with this dehaze. You can see if you bring it in and this kind of lighting setting, everything just gets really like crispy. So I'm gonna bring that back to nothing. Yeah, overall, I'm really happy with that. I'm not gonna spend a lot more time on that. I don't think anything else. We can play a little bit with the temperature. If we bring it down a little bit, feels a little cooler. And you always know when you've gone too far. Like for me, that's too far. So maybe like right in there. Yeah. All right, let's go to the next one. So this is a family photo. This is a different lighting situation. This is what I would call open shade. And this is really great lighting for family photos or group shots where you want the lighting on everybody to be even. So finding a place where the sun is not shining on anybody directly, and usually kind of where the light's coming, the sun's like behind them more is great. Sometimes this can be like a side of a building or you know, a group of trees, that kind of thing. So that's always the kind of even lighting I'm looking for when I'm shooting group photos. Okay, so let's just use that same setting. Whoa, okay. So let's bring down the exposure. Okay. All right, for me, this feels a little too contrasty, so I'm gonna take the contrast down a little bit, just like it's a little bit more flattering on the faces. And play with the exposure just a touch. Yeah, I like that. Okay, now for this one, it feels a little on the dark side to me. So remember that's because you're in an area where you're looking for shade. So there's a lot of black just naturally in the photo. So I'm gonna take some of that up just a little bit. Yeah, okay. That way it just feels a little bit more, a little brighter. All right, and then let's bring the temperature up just a little bit, warm it up. Pretty, I think I like that. Just add a little teeny bit of contrast back. Okay, yeah, I like that. Something I'll show you is with the greens. So if you go to your like HSL color sliders, I do bring up the luminance of the green a little bit. You'll see if you bring it down, then it just kind of gets a little darker. I just like it there. And then saturation, I do desaturate my greens quite a bit. And actually grass reads a lot of yellow too. So you can see what happens if I bring the green back. It just looks a little too like neon, and that's actually really not altering. It's not even at like the middle point, you know? So I really do like it quite desaturated. And the yellow too, you can see how that plays into the grass. So this to me is like, yuck, I don't like that at all. So I'm gonna bring that down. Okay. You can also play with your highlights and shadow tones. Sometimes I do, but more often than not, I feel like sometimes it adds like things that I have to work around later, and I do try to keep it as true as possible. So, all right, let's do a little before and after. So that's before, and ooh, okay, after. You know what? It feels a little bright to me still. Like maybe I lost a little bit of the contrast. So what I'm doing a lot of the time when I'm editing is going back and forth from that original, because it's weird when you start looking at something for a long time. It just like messes with your head. So it's always good to like get up, go away from your computer, or come back to that original. So, all right, I like that. For family photos, I do like everybody centered. This is the kind of thing that's going to be like on a fireplace mantle. It's not the time to get artsy. Not for me. Okay, love this shot. So let's paste in our settings. Yikes! Okay, bring it down, sister. So this one is kind of golden hour, a little bit before we did those portraits that we started with. So the lighting's going to be somewhat similar, but I wanted to show you how that plays out in a group photo. So right now, the thing I notice is that the blacks are like, I'm losing some of like the information here. So I'm going to bring the contrast back down a little bit. Yeah, like that. And then I'm going to bring up the blacks a little bit. Maybe like that. We'll see. Shadows are brought up maybe too much, actually. Let's just kind of find that middle ground. Where my eye just went to like her hair. So that brings maybe too washed out, and then here it's like right there. That's a good sweet spot. Okay, and then let's warm this baby up. Pretty. Ooh, like that. We can play with this dehaze tool, especially because there's no faces showing, so it's okay if like the colors are a little bit punchier maybe. Just a touch like that. I like that. And then let's just bring it in ever so slightly so it's not about that grass as much. I mean, I love it, but yeah, okay. All right, I kind of like that. Is it ever so skewed? Perfect. Okay. Before and after. So there you have it. That's just a little short demo. Hope this was helpful. hopefully gives you a little insight into how I see my images. A lot of it is just trusting your gut and going with what feels right to you, and that's something that you will be unique with. And that's the cool thing about this, is that no photographer is going to treat the same image the same, which is why it's so important to move away from just clicking paste or just like hitting a button with your preset and then walking away. Your tweaks are your individuality, and that's what makes you stand apart and gives you your unique style. I don't think you should use the same preset on everything you do just because you want to create cohesiveness. Like if you're using the same preset on everything, it should be because that's really what feels right to your eye. And over time that will just become stronger. Like now I can't really use any other presets. They just don't feel right to me. So yeah, I hope this is helpful. Maybe I'll do another one on like culling or something. So tell me in the comments what you liked or what you would like to see next time. And thanks for watching.